I remember Googling how to make more money on the side, and real estate investing came up. The best way for me to really learn and to conquer that fear is to do it. When I get to Pittsburgh, I'm going to start investing, and that's what I did. So I was paying $300 for a 2-bedroom apartment and a 2-car garage that I was also paying down in my mortgage. That's the whole point of house hacking and the beauty of house hacking.
So, Sarah, I want to talk a lot about your story, about your house hacks and how you found your properties, but I thought it'd be cool. I'm really interested in your career and the different things you've done in your career. And my understanding is you went to college, studied construction science, you worked in project management doing construction. So I'm curious how you got interested in that part of real estate and the building of things, construction. What was behind that?
Yeah, so originally when I first went to Michigan State, I was studying criminal justice and I really wanted to be a police officer and a detective. And I did that for about a year. And then my dad, he owned and operated an ad agency in the East Lansing area, and he worked with Michigan State, and he said, "Hey, I found this program. I think you would really enjoy it." And I think truthfully, he really didn't want me to be a cop, which I mean, I don't blame him. So he said, "Hey, check this out. Like, look into it." And it was a construction management program. So I did, and I didn't even know it existed. So I took a class. I thought I'll take one of the classes, the first class, and I just immediately fell in love with it. And I grew up, he liked to build things. We grew up, we built a tree fort together, a big tree fort up at our cabin. And I just always liked, you know, building things, and something about being able to see your product at the end, and you can say, oh, I've created that. And it's the same thing with project management in the commercial and residential field. Is you help build something and you can drive by and say, hey, I was a part of that. And that was one thing that I really really valued and really attracted me to that field.
Yeah, there's something so satisfying. I remember, like, I think back as a kid, like you build stuff with blocks or you play
Yeah.
out build a fort out in the woods. And then now we're an adult and you build this thing that you can drive by and it's tangible. And it's got started from an idea in somebody's head, in your head maybe. And then you're helping to bring this thing to like a real place that people live in or work in. Like
Yeah.
there's just something
And
satisfying
you get
about
paid
that.
to do it. Unlike when you build
Yeah.
a fort when you're a kid, you don't get paid to do it. But and you enjoy
Yeah.
it. That's obviously the biggest thing. And the projects I was on were very, very large projects. So obviously we had a really big team. So I was one person on a big team of people managing, a particular scope. So but you just like dealing with on a residential, smaller like a flip, you're still interacting with all of the other trades. You have to. I mean, you're even if you're doing steel, like if the steel's installed and erected wrong, it's going to affect the end, the finishes. So everything will be pushed out. So I think the problem solving as well was something that I really like. And you're out in the field, and every day is different. It's kind of like investing as well, and property management. Every day is something different, and you're dealing with problems that you're looking to solve and tackle.
Yep. Yeah. Once you can build a commercial building and put steel together, you're like, all right, I can figure out this hot water heater
Yeah,
and watch a YouTube video and figure this thing out,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Like coming from that to residential, it's like pretty. I mean, a little different, sure. I mean, commercial is a lot more complex, so it's like okay, like you said, I did commercial. Now I can definitely handle residential. It's just a little bit, it's a lot smaller, and you don't have as complex systems.
Well, so I want to circle back to tips you have for construction management, that kind of stuff later when we get to some of your projects. But you made a career transition where you did project management. It sounds like you still really love it and it's a fun career. But then you transitioned to property management.
Hmm.
I'm just curious, like what was your motivation behind that, and how did that transition happen?
Yeah, for me it was purely fear driven and knowledge driven. And when I say fear driven, I mean I had a lot of fear around managing and wanting to grow, but it was scary, as you know. And you can read 1,000 books, but and you can have analysis paralysis and you can sit there and read all these books and you still haven't taken action. So for me, I'm like, the best way for me to really learn and to conquer that fear is to do it. I said to myself, okay, well, I already have, the one property, and I've made it through that relatively smoothly. So how can I throw myself in and really grow and learn a lot more? And it helped that I had the background too in project management, because I could use that to my advantage and try to get in with the company and help with the maintenance, which is what I did. I already had that background of managing trades and managing teams, to accomplish, projects for construction. So that's kind of how that initially happened.
I think that's so cool that it sounds like there's the learning aspect of it. It's like, hey, here's an area, and I want to get into how you got into real estate investing and house hacking, why that motivated you too. But you recognize an area like, I don't understand property management, or I want to get better at it, so I might as well go make money doing that and use my existing skills to kind of grow. So you looked at it from a skill standpoint, which I think is so smart.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it was one of the best things I ever did. I've learned so much doing that, and I mean, I it was the best decision I ever made for myself and for my growth, and I'm literally being paid to do something that I want to do in the end ultimately for myself. And essentially it's kind of like grow on other people's money. It's I'm able to make mistakes, and it's not my five properties that are being affected. I'm able to work with the team and grow and learn, and that was the biggest thing for me.
Was there any fear from making that transition? You went to college to study construction science. You had a pretty good career managing projects where there's plenty of work there, and then go to property management. Was there any doubt in your head, or was there any other people in your life saying, "Hey, what are you doing here?"
Honestly, no. And I really mean that. I just kind of did it. I was like, I don't, to me, I didn't really feel like I was just I was just unhappy in, project management. I felt like I found myself doing other things at work, right? Like all I did was think about real estate. I wanted to do other things. So I'm like, okay, like clearly this is a sign, and my family and my partner are extremely supportive, and they were like, do what you have to do. I mean, I had to take a pay cut, and because I mean the construction industry pays really well, but I don't, for me it's not about money, right? Like if we really wanted to make a ton of money, I could go and find a job somewhere, I'm sure, but I doesn't mean I'm going to be happy, and that's not my goal. My goal is to have $10,000 a month in income generated from my rental properties by the time I'm 40. I'm 31, so I still have a long way to go, but I'm not going to get there, building arenas. As much as I love doing that, that's not going to get me there faster.
Respect. Love that. Well, let's go to your personal journey, because I love that attitude, and you're using your job as a tool to get to your personal goals. So how did you get interested? You said you're interested in real estate. Obviously, construction drew you, but what about doing house hacking? And you bought a couple house hacks now. Like what drew you to that side of things, and how did you actually get into your first deal?
I was living in Chicago back in 2018, right out of college, and like to say my first, big girl job. And when I really started to realize where my money was going, and Chicago is a fairly expensive city, right? I mean, it's not New York City, but or, California, but it's still expensive. And I was like, getting my paycheck, and I'm like, this is all that I get. And then all of it was going to rent. And I was just like, this isn't right. And I remember Googling like how to make more money on the side. And, obviously a million things come up, and real estate investing came up. And I was like, what's that? So I found Bigger Pockets initially. And, it's obviously exploded now. And you were on Bigger Pockets. And that's where I initially saw you as well.
You went down the rabbit hole. You got the bigger pockets rabbit hole and just started circling
Yeah,
and
exactly. And
studying
and
it.
there was just so much content on Bigger Pockets, and I just getting in the forums and just looking things up, and basically was like, okay, I'm gonna learn more about this. And I ended up living in Savannah, Georgia, and then was in Pittsburgh, and now I'm here in Michigan. But I was traveling all for work for, my construction management job. And I knew when I was in Savannah, Georgia, that I was going to be in Pittsburgh next. So I told myself, okay, I'm here. I was there for about a year in Savannah. So I told myself, okay, while you're here for this year, you're just going to learn as much as you possibly can about this. And I just, read all the books. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that pretty much solidified everything for me. But I read a lot of Brandon's books. When your book came out, I read that, and I joined one of the bigger pockets. I can't remember what class it was, but they had like one of those rookie boot camp classes. I joined that, and I would do it after work, and it was like I couldn't wait to get home to do that class, and then I basically decided when I get to Pittsburgh, I'm going to start investing, and that's what I did.
Love it. So you decided on the strategy of house hacking because ultimately you have to have a place to live, and it's one of those just beautiful beginner strategies where you can combine your residence with an investment. Can you talk about how you found or how you decided on the first property you bought and what some of the details were? I think everybody's always interested in the details of that first deal. Like what did that look like?
Yeah, so I decided on house hacking after I read I forget his name, but I read his house hacking book. You know the book I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
Craig Kurlop. Yep.
Yeah, the book everyone, yeah. And I thought that was a great strategy, great way to kind of save a little bit. I didn't have a ton of capital. So I met the real estate agent I worked with and ended up actually joining his team as an agent, a little while later. But I met him through networking, and he was amazing. And shout out to him, Jeremy Taggart. He's in Pittsburgh, and he was super helpful because he just has a lot of passion for the industry, and he helped me really figure out refine my area I wanted to invest in. And it was actually not in the city of Pittsburgh. It was a little northwest of the city, more like a C, becoming a C plus area. And really just looking at my financials, I decided I wanted to do, either a 2 to 3 or 4 unit. But really, with the money I had, a 2 unit kind of made the most sense. So I just kept looking and analyzing as many deals as possible, and just kept telling him like I'm hungry, I want to find deals, and he would send them to me. And he ended up actually he got a lead on a deal that was fell through due to the financing from the buyer. And the owner, I think he wasn't desperate, but I think he really wanted to get it sold. And I was able to get it reduced like 15,000 less than what he had asking. And it needed a little bit of work, so I had a value add there. I planned on basically renovating it while I lived there, which is what I did. And then the rents were way under market, so also I have that value add there of getting those rents up to market. So, and this also had a 2 car garage, which not many on that street had 2 car garage. So for me, it was like I ran the numbers, uh, you know, ran it with him, and just was like, let's do it. So I made an offer. He and the owner accepted, and we went from there.
And just to give a timeline on this, how long we're recording this in 2025? How long ago was that when you did your first deal?
That was in 2023, I believe it was. Yeah, because I've had that one for about 2 years.
Got it. Okay. So he was a little bit motivated. The deal fell through. That's always an interesting sign when you're a buyer because
Yeah.
that they might, even if they're not desperate, they're just kind of ready to move it. They might be more
Yeah,
willing
because
to
he thought
talk.
he was going to get
Yeah.
it done. So he's like, and then it doesn't. So you're like, perfect
Yeah.
time. And really,
Yeah.
like, I
Exactly.
met with him, and we kind of went for a walk on the street because he had a couple others. And turns out he really, I think, inherited a lot of these from his dad. And I mean, he basically said to me, I'm not a good businessman. And it kind of seemed like he didn't really, and he wanted to offload these because he wanted to help pay for his son's college. So he was looking for the money, but he kind of knew his number, and he was willing to move.
Okay. So what do you remember the numbers of what you actually paid for it? I'd like to just kind of get some of the rough
Yeah.
because you backed into it with how much you could afford. I love you said that. I just want to circle that. Like a lot of people when they're first starting, they're like, where should I buy? What should I buy? And you started with getting a team member who was able to help you and be your guide. That was really important. Your real estate agent. Then you also kind of figured out your budget. You're like, all right, here's how much I have, and you have figured out your financing to figure out, all right, here's how much I can put down. But then let's talk through like the actual numbers of what you paid for it, and then how you fixed it up.
Yeah, he had it listed for 132, and it was a duplex. Each unit was, it was a up down duplex, and each unit was 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, and I got it for 116.
Got it. Okay, awesome. And then how much did you end up having to put into it? Do you remember, just repair wise? You might
Yeah,
have done a lot yourself, but I'm just curious how that worked.
I did. Yeah, I did do a lot myself. Well, it wasn't all me. I want to say, like, my partner helped a lot. My parents
Yeah.
helped a lot. My buddy, who now is maintenance for me, Dennis, he helped a lot. But I mean, I probably all in put, close to 15,000 through like mistakes and everything.
Yeah, me too. I've been there, done that, still do that sometimes. So let's say roughly like 130, 131, plus you had some closing costs. So maybe you had like 130 to 135, somewhere in there
Yeah, yeah.
invested. And then what kind of financing did you get to buy that first one?
So that one was a conventional owner occupy loan. So I was able to put down only 10% because of that, and having, I obviously had to live there for a year per the loan terms, which no problem. But it was just and it was direct through a bank, so they were able to offer a little bit better. And I think, I can't remember my exact rate. I think it was like 6.2.
Okay. Got it. Cool. So roughly like 16,000 bucks is a down payment. Plus you had another 15,000 bucks plus some closing costs. So you might have had to come up with save up 30 to 35,000 bucks. Does that sound about right
Yep.
to get into that deal?
Yeah.
Got it. Cool. So yeah, I love that process, because sometimes like what comes first? Well, you had to have some savings. You had to have an idea where you're going to live. You have your real estate agent, and then you just start going hunting for deals, and you look at a lot of them, but this one finally works out. You find a value add. What were the rents? So you were living on one side, and did you live upstairs, downstairs? How do you pick which one to live in?
Yeah, I actually think that's a really good question. So I always look at it as, and I always prepare my partner for this, is we're going to live in the worst one, because
Yes.
that's the one that needs the work, right? And that's the one that I need to get up. So the unit upstairs wasn't too bad, but it was, it was pretty far under market. Market was about, at that time, 850 to 950, and he was paying only $500. So we needed to get him up, and their strategy to that. But and then the tenant downstairs, he was a whole nother story. He was paying $200 for a 2 bed apartment in a 2 car
Whoa,
garage. Yeah,
200 bucks.
yeah, he was getting the heck of a deal.
How do you work that out? I've had a couple situations where I had somebody living there, and there's a human side of you, like, hey, I get it. Somebody they're getting a good deal. At the same time, you paid a lot of money for this property, and you gotta make your mortgage payments. So how do you manage that, of having that conversation to the rent has to go closer to what the market value is?
For me, I think there is, what I've learned a lot is there's a lot more to leasing than I think people realize. Leasing, there's a lot of strategy to leasing, because like you said, the human side. And I think it was Brandon that said this, Brandon Turner, where the motto of being firm but fair.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about that a lot, because you do need to be firm, because you don't want to be taken advantage of. It is still a business, but you also need to be fair. Remember that these are people's lives, these are people's, salaries. So I the strategy I took is, I knew I didn't have the capital. I just spent all this money. I knew I had to spend a ton of money to get it renovated. So I couldn't afford a vacancy. I couldn't afford to have this tenant not living here. So I basically went to him and said, look, you're severely under market, but I'm willing to work with you. And we basically created a plan together. And I basically gave him two options, which I knew which one he'd pick. The first option is, next month you immediately go up to market, or I work with you over the next 4 months, and we slowly, or over the next, it was over the next like 2 years, and we just kind of slowly like work your way up. Like now he's at $900. So we slowly worked him up. Like we worked together on a plan, and like he was being increased he was month to month. So, and I kept him on a month to month lease. So we just slowly increased him, and got him up to more comfortable market.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's the fair part. Like, it's firm is, I've got to be able to afford this property and get to the 900 bucks eventually. The fair part is, I like to have you here. You seem like a good tenant. Let's see if we can work out something where it's not like overnight you got to pay that money, but he can then prepare. He can start working on
Yeah, exactly.
getting extra work. He can get overtime. He can try to get another job if needs to, but he'll understand, save more money, whatever he's got to do.
Yeah, that was my biggest thing is, hey, look, I'm willing to work with you. I'm not coming in here saying, and giving that kind of greedy landlord vibe to people of you need to pay this much more or get out, because I didn't want that. He'd been living there for 10 years. He was happy there. He didn't, I knew he didn't want to move and I didn't want him to move. So just working together with people and, you know, I think it really helped us build a good relationship, and he is a good tenant, and helped, it helped instill trust on both sides too.
Yeah. And so he was the one upstairs, and then the one downstairs is where you moved in. Is that right?
Yeah, I had to unfortunately kick him out, but I worked with him. I actually helped him find a new place down the street. One of the agent I was working with, Jeremy, it was one of his clients' properties up the street. I helped him fill out the application to get a new spot because I felt bad, having him. I mean, legally, I had to. He had to leave. I had to live there per, legally, per my mortgage. I had to be living in the property. So, but I also was like, I know it's not easy to move, and 60 days is a long time, but also it's not a long time when he literally had been living there for 20 years.
It's a big deal. Yeah. Yeah. So the fairness there was, I got to live there. I got to do this, but let me help you. Let me help you fill out the application. Sometimes just if you haven't moved in 20 years, it's overwhelming even to know what's out there and what the rates
Exactly.
are and
He was
who to talk
overwhelmed.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Got it. Okay. Well, that's really helpful to hear that. And so ultimately, though, you move in to the bottom unit, you get this thing remodeled, you work with the tenant upstairs. What does that look like? Because the kind of the promise of house hacking is you can cover some or all of your mortgage payments, you can save money, and you all the way back to when you were living in Chicago, you're paying rent. Like, hey, this is not the way I want to do this. I actually want to live somewhere where I can move forward. Like, what did it look like when everything's settled and you were just cash flowing and getting rent coming in?
Yeah, when I was living there, I wasn't cash flowing. But I was paying less, right? So I was probably paying, I don't remember off the top of my head now. I was probably paying like $300 a month to essentially live there, but now I'm cash flowing, quite a bit. But while I lived there, I wasn't cash flowing, but I was paying less. I was paying $300 for a two-bedroom apartment and a two-car garage that I was also paying down in, my mortgage and building equity. And so I guess that's the whole, point of house hacking and the beauty of house hacking.
Yeah, $300 a month. I mean, the market rent's $900. So there you go. You're living for a third of the rent, plus you're paying down your mortgage, plus the property's going up in value over time. So
Exactly.
tons of positives there.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So you got that one locked in. That was 2023, but you since did another deal. So how did you think about the transition to the second house hack you did, and how long did that take?
Yeah, so the second one, for me, I was ready to go. My goal was kind of like one a year, and I guess I was almost exactly there. It was like shy by like 1 month. I was, a little over, but I wanted to stay in the area still. I really like that area. I wanted to get at least a 3 or 4 unit. For me, I felt like I was going up if I did that. And so that's what I did. I found a triplex. It was actually off market. My broker, he had a deal off market. So I worked with him and I ended up getting that one for I mean it appraised, I got it for less than it appraised for, so that's always a good sign. Yeah, I mean I got it for two, I think I got that one for 208 and it appraised for like 220.
Awesome. Is this a fixer upper as well? Did you have to add some value to
No,
it?
and well, we did work into the agreement that they would do a little bit. I didn't. I installed the floors at the last one, and man, that sucked. I,
Yeah.
I did not like doing that. It was. I mean, it just was a pain in the butt. So I'm like, if you can have someone come through and just rip through and do these floors for me and paint real quick, we kind of negotiated that into the deal, and so I kind of financed that a little bit. I mean, it wasn't much at all, and just so I could move in immediately. And I didn't want to have to tackle that project again at that time. So, and I didn't have the capital. So, yeah, it was basically moving ready. Now, the tenant upstairs, his unit, it needs some work, but he's still living there. So, once he leaves, I'm gonna have to do some work there.
Got it. So is this the way it's situated? Was it like a up and down? Like the other one was an up and down duplex. Was this one 3 stories, like a basement, first floor, second floor?
So it's up down, and then there is a basement, but the third unit is like around back, kind of like attached to the basement, but it's has a separate entrance. It's actually a really cute little studio unit. I think it's a cute unit. It's a nice little
Hmm.
space, and the renter I ended up getting is perfect. She's a really good tenant. She's, right out of school and just like trying to find her own place. It was her first place, so it's perfect for that. But it's just right around back, and then the one that I lived in was a two bed, one bath, and then the unit above is huge. So I guess in theory that one could have been turned into two units, really, potentially, because it's a two-story unit with four bedrooms. It's massive. It's a massive,
Wow. Okay.
yeah. And he's also pretty far under market, but he's also been living there for a while. So I'm working with him, and I know he's looking to downsize. So I kind of been working with him. I've been saving up, so when he's ready to go here, I'll have the ability to turn his unit and make it good.
Got it. And I know a lot of these details because I saw when you got this deal, you posted it in our community. You're a member of Rental Property Mastery, our private community, and I remember one of the comments you made, Sarah, was that this is I love brick buildings. That was your
Yeah, I
comment,
do. I
and
love
I
brick.
resonate with that. I love brick buildings too. That like this is my perfect rental is brick with hardwood floors. So tell me about that. You're a construction person. What how do you what makes that a better building for you? How do you think about like the materials that you use and you buy in your building?
Yeah, I think brick is a lot easier to maintain, and it lasts way longer, and it looks way better. It just looks I just think it looks a lot classier, and again, it's easier to maintain. I think that's the biggest thing is I mean, yes, you have to wash brick really, but it's not like siding, It's like if you have trees and, moss and all that gets on the siding, and it just looks better. I just really think it looks a lot cleaner and honestly fancier.
I agree. One thing that I love about Pittsburgh, I have friends who live in Pittsburgh, and I was fascinated riding around. Like older cities to me are so cool because if they were built in the 20s, 15, the 10s, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, there were so many brick masons, and it was just so common to build in brick.
Yeah.
And so you see a lot of cool older buildings in Pittsburgh. I've seen these up down, and my wife's from St. Louis, so a lot of cool same era of properties. So I'm a sucker for that era. I think that the taller ceilings, the brick, there's some downsides too, right? With the old wiring and plumbing and sewer lines
Yeah.
that collapse and stuff like that. But
Definitely
yeah,
the sewers.
yes, sewer's a big one. But I think the point I wanted to ask you about with that is just when I first started buying properties, I wasn't as smart as you are. Like I didn't think about the maintenance of the properties as much as I should. I'm like, oh well, wood siding versus brick. I like brick too, but it's not that big a deal. But I've learned like by studying my books over time, like bookkeeping, like it's a huge deal
Yeah.
the more low maintenance your property is. Like it makes a difference between a property being like positive cash flow and not positive cash flow. So I think
Yeah.
you're onto something with not only the looks but also just the maintenance.
I try to think about that a lot, and just like CapEx too. And I don't know if it's more than people or not, but I just really think I would rather take longer to find a really good deal that I'm really comfortable with. And again, you always have analysis paralysis, and you have that possibility of not moving forward at all or taking action if you just wait forever. But if you have, if you really study and, create your buy box, like we always talk about creating your buy box, then, you'll be ready to take action when you're comfortable. But I think really understanding, you don't need to have exact costs, but understanding what are some things that could come up. You don't have to budget for everything, but like you said with sewers, I mean, in Pittsburgh, the sewers are so old, and with all of the hills, I mean, a lot of the sewers are really bad. I'm actually dealing with it right now at one of my properties. I knew that when I bought it, the house trap was not good, but I knew I had time. And it's been about 2 years, and here we are. So I'm getting ready to replace that now. It's been a little bit of a process, but I'm working with the contractor now. He's out there replacing that. But yeah, I mean, I try to budget for that, at least something, or be aware of like, okay, in the next 5 years, I probably have to do this. All the roofs, the one I definitely need a roof replace on in the next 5 years. So try to think about all of those things, at least have it, at least something for it.
Yeah, it's so obvious to pay attention to the asking price. Like, hey, it's 260 or it's 210. That number
Yeah.
seems pretty clear. But the fact that if it's an older building, we might have $10,000 or $20,000 worth of roof repairs. We might have a $15,000 sewer line. We might, the trees have to be. So I mean, that could easily add up to 40, 50,000 bucks in old CapEx over the next 5 to 10 years, and that's something that's kind of like a hidden cost of a property that I know I didn't always take that into account. But if you think about it, what you compare two properties and one has those things done, the other doesn't, it could be a major difference. You might be able to pay more for the property that has it done and still be ahead. So I
Yeah.
guess just my point is that you can't always get stuck on price. Sometimes it's the a long-term cost of the property.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess it also depends on your strategy, you could argue, but if only want to hold it for 5 years, maybe you're not concerned about that. But for me, my strategy is, I'm planning to hold these long term at least 20 years, unless I end up wanting to use. I have been thinking about, I don't have enough equity, but at one point would it be worth, like doing a 1031 and taking the ones in Pittsburgh and using those funds here in Michigan, but
Right.
that's like also a long term thing, right? But I think it really depends on your strategy too.
Yeah. Love it. Well, I want to go to your long-term strategy here in a second, but I want to kind of wrap up your second deal you did and the triplex. One of the biggest challenges I think a lot of people have as they're trying to scale and grow, even if they're trying to do one a year, is how am I going to get the money for the next deal? Like I said, I put
Yeah.
30,000 bucks into the first one. It was already kind of strapped for cash. Now I want to buy another one. How did you go about buying that second deal? Like what did the financing look like? How did you come up with the money? Was that a struggle to come up with the money? I'm just curious how that money side of things.
Yeah. So my parents helped me. They are investors with me for me. So they've loaned me the money, and they know they're not going to get their money back for a long time, but they're okay with that. Like they're investing in me. They're investing in me really in the process of real estate. But they did help me because I couldn't have saved all of that in a year. But one thing I did do, like back when I was living in Savannah before I moved to Pittsburgh, is when I had about a year before I knew I was moving, I went online. I just, found a financial advisor, and I set up a call with someone that was in Pittsburgh where I was going to be moving. And I started working with him, and he was affordable. He's awesome. And I'm still working with him now. And he's also an investor, actually. I told him, like, these are my goals. I need help. I need to save this money. And so we basically set up, he helps me invest, my 401k and all that and index funds. But he basically helped me set up some accounts that would help, grow a lot faster than your standard bank account. And we were putting in a significant amount each month that I just wasn't seeing. And it was just going straight there. And that was helping for that first down payment. And then we just continue to replenish. I still have that account and I just continue to replenish it as like my down payment funds, but my parents do help me invest as well.
Awesome. Yeah, that's so smart on the financial planner side of things too. I hadn't thought about that, but it's having someone, it's like you and I are both into sports and working out. You're into
Yeah.
powerlifting, which I think is so cool.
Yeah.
But we have coaches, right? We get people to train us, but in the money side of things, it's a little bit different. Not everybody gets somebody to coach them along. So that's really smart.
I mean, I'm sure we could figure it out, right? But it's like the old, we can't do everything ourselves. Like we have to pick really, okay, what is the thing that I want to, and like build your team. It's like, maybe if I really love finding deals, I don't need a real estate agent, but I might need, to work with a lender, or the other way around. If I really like, I might get my license and, do it myself with mortgage. But same thing. It's like, I'm sure I could have read books and taken all the time to figure that out. But why? Like my time, I was spending my time trying to learn about house hacking, real estate. So I'm like, I'm going to pay this person, you know, to help me go faster, escalate that.
Yep. There are financial planners who will let you just almost like an attorney or a CPA, you can pay them by the hour, right? You can just you can pay a fee. And then if that's a good return on your time, then if you're a busy person, that can make a lot of sense.
Yeah, and he, his fee was very reasonable. And I mean, I didn't have a ton of, like, I don't have a huge account, right? I don't have a ton of assets, and um, so it wasn't a ton of work. I'm just growing. As you grow, it obviously costs more. We has more money to manage, but just starting out, it was a really good move.
Well, let's talk about that big picture. So I think it's cool that you've gotten to this place where you have two properties, you have 5 units. You started with no units. So like, looking back 2 years from now, 2 years back, I mean, you've made a lot of progress. You've now just for your career and kind of family move, you've decided to move back to Michigan and settled in there. Like, what's next for you, I guess would be one question. And then you mentioned a goal that I think a lot of people might get excited about. You have a goal of making 10,000 bucks per month from your real estate investments by the time you're 40. So you're about 30, 31 right now. Is that
I'm
right?
31. Yeah, I turned
Okay.
32 in September. So
Okay. So you got some time here, but so I guess my two questions are: one, what's next in the short term, and then what's your big picture idea on how you might be able to close that gap between where you are right now and what your goal is?
yeah, so when I moved to Michigan, I knew I wanted to stay in property management because one of the ways I really learned a lot about Pittsburgh market is being in property management. You're dealing with inspections with boroughs and municipalities. So you're learning all about what they require. You're driving around through properties. You're seeing areas. You're dealing with rents, all of that stuff. So that really helps you learn. So I knew when I moved here, I had to continue to do that because I also enjoy it, and I could really help. It helped me learn the Michigan market. So that's what I started doing, and I found a property management company that I really I met with the CEO and I really resonated with him. I honestly view him as a mentor. I think he's done some syndication deals, and he's really into commercial real estate, and that's really had me thinking a lot lately about that. And I was initially like, okay, I want a house hack again from like 2 to 4 units, but now I'm like, I want more. I want larger. And there's a lot more to that, but I think for me right now, my goal is just going to be to get my next house hack. I'm looking at that right now. I'm still kind of learning the areas. I'm finishing up getting my real estate license right now, so I'm hoping my goal my goal was by end of Q2 to have that next deal. But the inventory here is a lot less than Pittsburgh. It's actually pretty insane. The inventory is crazy low when it comes to multifamily, at least on market and off market. So I'm gonna utilize Deal Machine, and that's kind of what's gonna be my strategy now. Is I think to increase my odds of finding a good deal, because I think the on market deals are a lot more expensive because of that low inventory.
Yeah. So something we work on all the time in RPM is the off market deal finding. How do get your buy box and then study your list and build a list of properties that are off market. So that'll be a good avenue to look at. And just to give people context, you're in Metro Detroit, is that right? Or can you tell us kind of
Yeah,
what general area you're in?
yeah, I'm in Metro Detroit, so I'm in like the Macomb area, Macomb County area. But there's multiple counties there. Like Wayne County is the city of Detroit. Then you have Oakland County as well. And I work in Oakland County, but they're easy to travel between. But I don't have a specific county. I mean, I think sometimes when it comes to that, I maybe it's not the best strategy because I'm like very broad, but there aren't a lot of deals. So for me, it's like I more so look at the market itself as like, is it a C, like a C class area to like, I would say like C to C, like C to B minus, because I'm living there. So I want to feel safe. I want to feel, comfortable living there. So I might, but I'm also not going to live in an A area because I'm going to pay way more for that. That can be hard when you're house hacking sometimes. It's like finding that balance, like where you're comfortable living.
You want to be on a budget, but you also want to have an area that has you feel comfortable living, but also has potential to grow as well and do
Exactly.
better over
Yeah.
time.
And I'm still working to learn, the areas as well. I learned them in Pittsburgh pretty quick. I would just spend hours driving around. Like I would just spend hours on Saturdays driving through all of the areas, the D areas that I'm driving pretty fast through these ones, and then the A areas where I'm like, wow, these are mansions. So it's like driving through all of the areas to expose myself, and really like Pittsburgh, for example, is very street by street. I feel like it is here too, but that's what I'd recommend to anyone. And we talk about it all the time in RPM too, is just getting out there and driving around. You don't need to have Deal Machine to do it. Just, I mean, you could even do it from your couch, I suppose, on Google Earth, but you just get out there, drive around and get a feel for the areas and kind of see what type of properties are out there.
100%. That's like the to give our training analogy, like I always say, like working out with weights or training if you're an athlete is like a daily thing. Like looking at
Hmm.
the market is a daily. If you want to be a real estate investor and have knowledge, like you gotta just always be looking at it, because then when a deal pops on the market and you're like, wow, that thing is 50,000 below what everything else is selling for, or that rent is, $300 below the market rent, you wouldn't know that unless you had trained, before that.
Exactly. Yeah, you can, and that's why I had my boss set me up on the MLS, and I just go on there every day, and like you said, I'm trying to learn, see what's out there, learn the area, and I'm not completely, off market only, but I think there could be potentially more opportunity off market, especially to get it lower. Obviously that's the goal with the off market, but just driving around, I see there's so many, duplexes and triplexes, but they're not on the market. So just utilizing Deal Machine to try to find those people that potentially want to sell and get out of the game, or they need the cash, and see if I can get a good deal.
So I anticipate a few months from now hearing from you and saying, I got my next deal. I see that coming. And so it sounds like
I
the
hope
big
so.
picture is you're going to get a house hack. You might even go bigger. I like the ambition. Hey, maybe I could do a bigger deal. You've got a lot of talent. So you're going to be able to, from the construction side, the financing, the property management, you're going to put a lot of things together. So I could definitely see you going bigger and doing great with that. And ultimately, like, this is a game that it kind of gets momentum. You start off buying one, then two, and it seems like it's slow at first, but then you just buy a deal a
Hmm.
year, that momentum builds, and it's almost like a
Yeah.
wave. Eventually you have equity in those properties, and you can sell one and buy another one, and the cash flow starts building. So it's like a very slow building wave that then builds on momentum. So I could totally see you hitting your goal.
Yeah, I think it would be awesome to do a syndication deal. And my boss does have experience with that, so me and him talk about it a lot, and he really likes the syndication side. And I do too. I mean, that I'm not saying that's the only way I could get the deal, but I think that's obviously using other people's money is
Yeah.
is going to help you a lot, to get bigger deals and faster. But I think that's maybe next year thing. I'd like to get another house hack first, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah. Build, you got a good foundation. Yeah. And syndications, for those who hadn't heard, you basically buy a bigger deal where you put the deal together, raise capital from other people, and then you're able to knock down a bigger deal that you manage, and you share with them, basically the private money partners, and then you, as the person who syndicates the deal and puts it together, kind of or you're like the captain of the ship. You drive the deal.
Yeah, and there's a lot of opportunity for that for sure.
Well, a lot more I could ask you, but I want to give you a chance to give some feedback to people. So I think people are going to hear your story and they're like, all right, that's really awesome. Whether they're like brand new and they hadn't bought their first deal, or maybe they're in the middle of their first house hack or two. Do you have any tips or advice you could, maybe from the property management side, maybe from the construction side, or both, on for people who are in the middle of this or anticipating doing a deal? Like, what have you learned that you would give feedback on to people?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, and maybe it's cliche, but one of my favorite quotes, and I don't know who said this quote. I don't know who said it, but your network is your net worth. I am convinced that the only reason I am here is because of that. When I moved to Pittsburgh, literally the first week I moved there, I was at like three meetups. And I was there, I was going to all these meetups, and I was meeting as many people as possible and talking to as many people as possible. And I was basically a sponge. And I was like, I will work for free. I will help you do anything. I will, whatever you need, just so I can be exposed to everything I possibly can. And I think that's a huge thing is, and I know it's scary for a lot of people when you're new, and I love when a brand new investor comes to a meetup, and that you can tell they're scared but they're there, and like that's the hardest part is getting
Yeah.
there and just putting yourself out there. So every city has it, every city has meetups, and we also live in technology era. You could, I'm sure, find stuff online, but I think that's the biggest thing is it's hard to find deals and make connections, from your couch. I mean, I'm sure you could, but it's a lot harder to do that.
Yeah.
So getting out there, exposing yourself and meeting people, I think is a huge thing. Another thing is obviously building your team, like we talk about all the time, and really figuring out what does that look like for you. For me, I spent a lot of time deciding, do I want to get my license or not? And for my first deal, I did use, Jeremy as an agent. But then for my next deal, it was, I got that through connections that I had made. That's how I found that off market deal. Someone brought it to me and said, hey, do you want to buy this? And I had my license, so I was able to do everything myself. But, I kind of decided for me that was important to, I can take care of the license side, but I need these other team members to help me. So kind of deciding too is like, okay, where could you add value the best? maybe you want everyone to, want the whole team, you just kind of want to be the investor. But I do think it's important to still know, you know, each part of those things as well.
Sounds like you did a good assessment. I think this is really smart of here's what my skills are and here's what I'm interested in doing, the deal finding or the project management or whatever. And then you outsourced the things that you either weren't interested in or you needed help with. And that's good
Exactly.
advice, right? Like if somebody's like super busy and they have a ton of cash and a ton of money, but they can't do any of the other stuff, then they bring the money to the table, but then they hire out everything else. Whereas you were having to be scrappy. And so you had to like, your competitive edge was I'm willing to do some of these things and then hire other things, but you have to piece it together. Like everybody's unique. You can't, not, we don't
Yeah.
all have the same exact approach to the team side of things.
Yeah. We know what the team needs to be to, like, generally what we need for the team, but it's just kind of like, okay, how do I want my team to look? Like, you're building your team, that you're gonna, grow with, essentially. So where do you want to fit in that team? And maybe you're just the leader, and everyone helps you out, but you still should know how to do, relatively, I think, how the processes work and everything, right? But I think another big thing is, and I'm still working on this a lot too, is building your systems. And I think it's very important. If you are organized, I think you're like
Yeah,
90% ahead of a
true.
lot of investors, honestly, just being organized. And by that, I mean, whether it's digital or paper, if you really want paper, but you know where everything is. Like, you have, like, if you need to reference a lease, like, where that lease is at, like, you have information. I guess I think of it this way too, is like, I'm self managing right now from afar. Even if you're not self managing from afar, you're just self managing. If I ever want to turn it over to a property manager, like, what would I need to give them for them to be successful? Because as a property manager, it's hard to manage for you if you hand me this and you're like, oh, I don't know where my keys are. I don't have leases. I don't have. It's like, it's really nice to be able to hand it to them, and we can say, hey, these are my expectations. Like, here's what I have. And also, it's a lot easier for you. It's easier to do it when you have less than to go back when you have 100 properties and to be like, oh crap, I have to build all this now.
Yeah, if you want to scale and grow, whether it's to 5 properties or 100 properties, those systems that you're talking about really are like the skeleton of the structure. And if you have a bad structure, it's just going to collapse. Like you're not gonna be able to
Exactly.
grow. So it's better to do it at 2 properties than it is to wait until you're about to fall in. You know.
I think of everything as scalability, because I know my goals, right? So example would be, right now I use Avail, the free version of Avail, and it's not the best, but it works. But I really am considering Buildium, but I'm like, I only have 5 units, so right now Buildium, is it worth that cost? But I think Buildium would be worth it for me. So I'm like, all right, once I get my next deal, I think I'm just gonna make that transition, because I know that my goal is to keep buying. So, like, I'd rather do that now. And it's like, if I can afford, and it's kind of goes back to like, what's your time worth? If I'm willing to have a better system that's going to help me manage better from afar, then why would I not do that?
Smart. It's an investment. It's an investment in yourself. And like, people kind of, they get hiring people, but they don't always invest in systems and processes and software. And today software is such a tool. Wow. I mean, from deal finding, we've talked about Deal Machine, to systems to manage properties. I've started to use AI a lot just to brainstorm, not necessarily to
Me
implement stuff,
too.
but it's just like, man, I have this property management issue. I have this heating and air issue, or I've even started taking pictures of the serial number of my unit or my heating and air unit, and then I'll put that in the AI and say, help me figure out how to solve this problem.
Wow,
And
that's a good idea.
yeah, it's like I was like, wow, that's amazing. So it's, there's so many tech tools these days that fall under systems, but if you're not organized, like you said, you're not going to be able. For example, you can't use AI unless you have all your paperwork available. Like I use it for insurance. Yesterday, I was talking to my adjuster on a claim I have, and they said, no, we're not going to pay you for that tree that fell on the garage. That's not in your policy. I was like, I think that's in my policy. Let me ask Chat GTP, because I'd already uploaded
Yeah.
and within 10 seconds, they said, it showed me the part of my policy that said, yes, you do get reimbursed if it fell in the house, if this, all the, because it's hard to understand your insurance policy. I mean, that's just a specific example, but being organized, to your point, allows you to use tools and not just have them, just be a burden for you.
Right. And it can be overwhelming. There's so much, but I think just pick one and try it. And you have to explore and see what works for you. And not to say you have to use one tool forever, but I really do think thinking in terms of scalability is helpful, at least for me. If I know I want to be here, then I want to start kind of building to allow myself to get there easier and not kind of, limit myself.
Well, these have been great tips. I love it. I'm excited to see where you go with all this, Sarah. I think you're doing an awesome job. I'm really proud of what
Thank
you
you.
accomplished so much, and I see that 10-year goal you got, or the 40 goal on the horizon is
Yeah,
definitely a doable thing,
me
and
too.
excited for you to do that. So, uh,
Thank you. I appreciate it.
so I know people are gonna, they enjoyed your story, and feel free to share this, and I'll put links to anything you have. But is there anywhere, if somebody wanted to connect with you offline, social media, whatever, let people know where they could connect with you, and then I'll have links to it so they can check it out afterwards.
Yeah, I think the best place would probably be Instagram. I'm trying to get better at posting on there. I never posted my before and after of my first house hack,
Oh yeah.
and it's actually very like eye opening. Maybe I'll do that. But Instagram, like I love talking about investing, and I just really enjoy it. Like with RPM, people in the community reaching out, and I've talked to several people on the phone. And so if anyone messaged me on Instagram, I would love to set up, if you're in the area, for sure we could, grab coffee or something, and just kind of chat about our goals, and help see how we could help each other.
Yeah, wonderful. All right, I'll put a link to your Instagram on the show notes and in the description of podcast and YouTube. Sarah, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks for being here, and
Thank you, Chad. I really
talk to you
appreciate it.
soon. All right. In this episode, Sarah shared how she bought 2 profitable house hack deals. But you may still be asking a question: how do I actually know a property is a good deal? So in my next video, I want to show you how I analyze a duplex rental in a real life example. I'll walk you step by step through the process and the tools I use to analyze a real estate investment. If you're watching on YouTube, just click on the thumbnail above me here, or you can click on the link in the podcast or the YouTube description below. Thank you so much for watching or listening. I'll see you in the next episode.